Hello, I'm Nelson Burton. Welcome to another Indigenous Circle special. When thinking of Saskatchewan, most people conjure up images much like you see behind me, grain fields and big skies. The reality of it is that more than 50% of the province is covered in forest, and where there's forests, there's fires. Tonight we'll take you from the boardroom where planning and strategy takes place to the front lines with a fire suppression team. You'll see that fighting forest fire in Saskatchewan has gone high-tech, that the people involved are among the very best in the world. When we come back, we'll put you in the line of fire. George Keewatin and Hilliard Gamble have jobs where they really feel the heat. Those jobs put them on the front line of a battle that pits man against nature. They fight forest fires, and as with any battle, their goal is victory.
We're there right away, like we have to put that fire out right away. It's the best way we know how.
At the same time, both men, both Aboriginal, have a deep respect for their enemy.
Well, culturally, the fire is very sacred, so coming onto a job, I take total respect for it, and that's part of what was given to me through my grandparents, my parents, is to totally respect it, and that's part of my job.
Saskatchewan has 35 million hectares of forest. That's 60% of the provincial landmass. Here, Aboriginal people make up the majority of the population. The north is dotted with First Nation and Métis communities. The Aboriginal people have ties to the land, so it's natural when fire breaks out, they're usually the first ones on the fire line. On average, there are about 700 fires in the province each year. That number varies with weather and burning conditions. Murdoch Carrier is the province's chief forest firefighter.
Firefighting was something that most northerners are exposed to at a very early age.
As director of the Fire Management and Forest Protection Branch, Carrier oversees every aspect of fire management. He's committed to ensuring Aboriginal people have a role to play.
The business of fires we can handle quite well. We got up to 80% of our organization now is Aboriginal. A lot of the decision makers are Aboriginal, and that we can actually do a job, but we don't see ourselves as Aboriginal people. We see ourselves as professional people making management decisions. We see ourselves as professional technicians that know the business of fire.
Fire management costs on average $30 million a year. The priority of fire protection is based on a term called value at risk. A value at risk could be anything from houses to factories to tourism destinations. Their value runs into the billions of dollars.
We have about 50 million hectares that we look after, so this is not small real estate. Not including the southern communities where we administer and have what we call government lands, crown lands, that we also have fire protection opportunities for.
But fire management is about more than the battle on the front lines.
People usually think of us as people who just go put fire out. A lot of us won't even see a fire. We'll never get to that stage. We pretty well have a whole, probably about 40 different types of jobs in what I call permanent opportunities in the fire field.
And one of those opportunities is fire manager. Robbie Gardner manages the West Boreal region. His area includes the communities of Meadow Lake, La Loche, and Buffalo Narrows. The region is a mix of timber, lakes, and mining.
My job is to oversee the plans every day to ensure that proper placement of manpower throughout the region, from whatever information we get from the weather and the local forest protection officers that have forest protection areas in each of the areas that they work in. We review the plans, we talk about movements of equipment, helicopters, tankers, and with the information that's in front of us, we make a decision.
Protecting these resources means developing a relationship with local residents.
We do hire a lot of Aboriginal people. A lot of our hiring is locally. It's locally done. We do have some standards that we follow when we hire for forest protection workers. Those are the people that are hired on a seasonal basis. We hire them in April 1st, and in most cases to about September 30th, 22 weeks. And these are the people that are hired regardless if there's a fire or not. And then we go and hire emergency firefighters, which are crews that are off the street but are trained, have had their training, 1-week training prior to being hired.
Local programs ensure crews are hired from communities and Indian reserves.
Your heading's going to be 50 degrees, right?
The science of fire and the advancing technology used to fight them are two interesting aspects of the firefighting business. When we return to the line of fire, we'll take you to the command center. The daily planning behind fire management involves dozens of people. Their jobs are to plan strategic attacks and deploy crews to the areas where the risk of fire is the greatest. Some draw comparisons to fighting a war, and most of the planning takes place here at the Provincial Fire Center in Prince Albert.
I-8 there.
Each morning starts the same way. The 5 regional districts hook up on a province-wide conference call.
I guess something to add here is the John Fire. We've got the new map on it here.
There are many tools used in firefighting. Many, like shovels and water pumps, are the more common and most recognized. But modern technology is now commonplace. Satellite images and computers let fire managers know much more than they could just a few years ago. The Prince Albert Fire Center is the nerve center of the forest firefighting operation. Everything from state-of-the-art computer technology to instant communication to something as basic as a wall-sized map. It's all there to monitor fire and the weather.
We got meteorologists, we got professional people that forecast. One thing about fire is you got to understand weather. Weather controls fire, and understanding weather and being able to predict weather positions yourself better to put the resources, what we call our preparedness system, to put the resources in the right places where we anticipate fire starts, given fire burning conditions.
Calculating fire behavior is not easy. It's a puzzle, and the pieces include wind direction, burning conditions, and rainfall, all factors that influence the potential of fire.
With this, we have many maps, wind speed and direction. It'll forecast what direction the winds are going to be that day and the wind speeds. We also have maps that produce attack times. Now this tells us roughly that in each one of these areas how much time we have to get there before that fire would be 1.2 hectares in size.
But not all fires are predictable. Lightning can light up a forest in a heartbeat. Strategically placed sensors allow weather experts to know the exact location of a strike.
Essentially, there are sensors located in various areas across Canada now, and an electromagnetic wave is emitted with every lightning strike. And what happens is these sensors can detect this electromagnetic radiation from these thunderstorm strikes. And in order to calculate the position of this lightning event, different sensors in the area will triangulate a position.
Fire suppression crews are then sent to areas where the risk is the greatest.
When the fire is reported, automatically we try to get the closest initial attack crew. That's a crew that's on board on a helicopter to go and action the fire. Usually contact the closest helicopter to that area to go to that direction through our GPS system. They go there, they advise back to the base to see if there's any air support that they're going to need, if air support is required, and then we then turn around and dispatch the air support to that. The ground crew goes into the fire, they try to control it. If they're successful, they make a decision then if they're going to need some sustained action crews to come in to come in to support that fire.
Every fire is different, but the goal of every firefighter is the same.
Our objective is to get at a fire as quickly as possible, as small as possible. That's our objective. We do have a performance indicator there that is 2 hectares. And our goal and our objective is always to get at a fire at the smallest size as possible. So The detection has to be in place. The initial attack have to be prepared. The tankers have to be ready to roll. So our objective is to get at a fire. Hopefully, in most cases, it's a lot less than 2 hectares. Because even a 2-hectare fire after at a really hot day and with some good wind, this is going to be very difficult to control, depending on the conditions of that day.
The initial attack Gardner speaks of is a crew of 5 firefighters. They are dispatched and then fly to a fire start. If the crew believes that it can safely contain the blaze, the attack begins.
I'm the chainsaw man. I'm the first man out, and usually I get all the equipment out and get everything set up as the boys come out of the helicopter. And usually they let me out to do the job right away.
This season, in the region of the forest where most of the human activity takes place, the initial attack crews have been responsible for putting out 92% of all fires before they got over 10 hectares in size. That means almost 600 fires were extinguished before they became a serious threat to the forest. Often, firefighters call for help from above. Water bombers, dumping millions of gallons of water on stubborn and hard-to-get-at blazes. At other times, they build their own burn to help in the fight. Fighting fires with fires is a common phrase and one that especially applies to forest firefighting. Aerial ignition and prescribed burns are 2 effective methods in forest firefighting.
With our aerial ignition crews, there's helitorch or AID machines. They can actually go out there and lay a circle of fire or a pattern of fire and create enough intensity on the side of it that it'll actually pull a smoke and head fire towards it. So you can actually steer a fire into a lake or into away from a value at risk. As the head fire has a lot of intensity and it's sucking oxygen in from all 4 sides. So it'll actually draw that fire and it'll stand it up very straight. So it'll backfire into the main fire, stand the smoke column up very straight, and it'll burn very intensely for a while, then it'll drop to the ground. And then it'll take another 20 to 70 minutes, depending on the situation, to build up enough steam to get another head fire going. So they can go in front of a fire and slow it down and slow its progression step by step and actually give the people ahead of it time to put up sprinkler systems or to evacuate. We can't stop a fire with fire, but we can slow it down, steer it, or delay it.
There are no illusions among those in the line of fire. Everyone realizes all the effort and all the resources don't ensure everything will go as planned.
That's something that I've learned in 25 years. We are always going to lose fires. There's no doubt in my mind. And you have to prepare for that also.
Preparation means training, both physical and mental. That's where Brian Morin comes in. He oversees training in the Buffalo Narrows region.
In a bush, you got to carry, so what they do is you have a pump and you have hose. We have hose bags. There's about 45 pounds of hose in it that they carry in the bush, and they get off a helicopter. Like a helicopter sometimes can't really land close to the fire, so we have to land in a spot away from the fire. So they have to make sure they carry all that fire stuff to the fire or close to a lake so they can set up and walk into setting up their hoses into the bush.
Well, I guess I've been in the business for 25 years now, and I've seen a lot of changes. When we first started, just in hiring people, when we first started, we used to hire by people's knowledge and skills that know the bush, that know how to work. Now, when we hire people for a fire program, we hire for academics is very important. Because of the technology that we now use, computers, how to do fire behavior predictions in the computer system, and fire behavior predictions is something that will give you an idea of how much that fire is going to expand at a certain time.
Regardless of the job, training is mandatory and it takes place at different locations around the province.
We have to be physical fit because of the work that's involved in firefighting. There's a lot of hard work that's there, and if you're not very fit, it's pretty hard work for you to be out there.
Besides the physical training, employees can also find themselves in the classroom. These students are learning the basics of using a compass.
Well, the compass training is something new that we're trying to put together because we're going with new maps. We're going with before we used to use grids on our maps. Now we're going with longs and lats. So the compass training teaches them how to measure a distance without even going across a fire or whatever. They can tell how big the fire is just by using a compass. That's the training we use. And map reading is the long and lats that they use now, that they have to understand those.
Training aside, a firefighter knows that being on the front line of a fire creates a unique feeling, one most people will never experience.
The adrenaline is really going when you're on fire and you want to get it done. You feel like you did something when you put that fire out.
On this day, Mervyn Bouvier is between fires. He's helping set up a camp at a remote location in the north. There are no roads here. The only way in is by helicopter.
It's risky at times. You have to make decisions at just that 1 second flat. Then you have to move. And sometimes it could be right, sometimes it could be wrong.
When he's not fighting fires, Bouvier goes to university. A fire burns in him wherever he goes.
I still love it. I love the wilderness, fresh air. And at one time, we had a chopper come into to land and pick us up, but then the wind blew us right across to the other side of the lake and blew us right into the beach. And a couple firefighters, that was in the 80s. So now, today, a couple of people don't come firefighting because of that. You know, they're kind of scared.
Mervyn isn't without fear, but his love of the land and the battle keeps him in the line of fire. The battle rekindles the ties between Aboriginals and the land. It's a relationship vividly captured in these black and white images. These are smoke jumpers, many of whom were Aboriginal. From 1947 to 1964, they jumped from airplanes into the heart of a fire. Outfitted in specially designed gear and carrying over 100 pounds of equipment, they risked life and limb. Some died. Forest firefighting has changed since the days of the smoke jumper, even if the fires themselves are pretty much the same. When we return, the silver lining on a scorched landscape. Despite the destruction that fires can cause, they do in fact serve a purpose. This area, for example, experienced the effects of fire a few weeks ago. But like all burnt areas, new life will emerge. For Aboriginal people, the effects of fire have always been understood and accepted.
If you can go back into before the white man came, obviously fire was used from people knowing what plants grow after fires. They understood fire very well from berries, you know, what grows and where certain things grow for their medicinal plants. So they understood the forests and where fire burned, and also from the southern area, because the southern landscapes were traditionally had very fire regimes that burnt prairie fires burnt quite frequently. So you got habitat zones. And
stories of the big blaze and the heroic efforts of those on the front lines are engraved in Aboriginal culture.
I used to sit around a campfire and listen to the stories that they had about why they went out to fight fire, and you know, the amount of work that they put into, and leaving the families for quite lengths of time when when other traditional activities were happening, like fishing, hunting, and they were out fighting fire. And I found that they had other values. Now what we call in the new age in fires is values at risk. Their values at risk were based more on traditional use of the land, and they wanted to protect the integrity of those lands so they could practice what was quite important to them, and that's in trapping and gathering.
But against that rich history of fire and Aboriginal lifestyle, there's a stereotypical image of how fires start. One of the biggest myths surrounding forest fires in the north is that many of them are a result of arson, people trying to create employment. At one time this may have been true, but because of education and community involvement, the situation has changed.
Just to take you back, I guess back in 1993, 94 when I first started this, we had a tremendous problem with fires, man-caused fires on the northwest side of the province. We tried many different methods, including myself when I was in an enforcement role, running around the bush trying to catch people that were setting these fires. And a lot of them were, I would say, arson fires, because they were set for employment.
The rash of fires gave rise to meetings with community leaders. The dialogue paid dividends.
Ever since we did that back in 1994, if I can recall through stats, I think we had 94 arson fires identified in 1994 when we started the committee. Back in 1995, 96, we were down to 34. And the last couple of years, we're sitting at 3 to 4 fires per year.
Whatever the number of fires and however they may start, most firefighters understand that fires can be a benefit to the forest, the wildlife, and the people. Firefighter Isaac Roberts.
After a good hot fire, there's usually blueberries that will grow after the fire. Like 3-4 years online, you'll have a good picking for berries and all that. Or it could be mushrooms as well. And also, like after a fire, it usually rejuvenates the population of moose and deer because they like their fresh browse.
Fires will always be part of life in the forest, but the man responsible for putting them out knows that the greatest opportunities, both present and future, exist when the forest is green.
We need conservation officers, we need environmental officers, we need all of those people to ensure that we have clean water and clean air to breathe for the future of our kids and their kids. So, and we need professionals in the First Nations world to be able to maintain the standards that we're looking for, that we want to enjoy, that our forefathers enjoyed before the industrial pollution that's being created by in what we call progress.
The forest is vital not only to the economy of the province, but to the lives of the people that live, work, and play in Saskatchewan's north. But are the human demands on the forest realistic? Can technology stay one step ahead of Mother Nature? As the forest grows to maturity and in some cases old age, the debate over balancing the needs of man and nature will continue. While the academics and politicians sort that out, the Saskatchewan Forest Protection Branch will continue with their work. And as you've seen in this program, the Aboriginal voice will continue to be heard throughout the forest and in the boardrooms. I'm Nelson Bird. Thanks for watching In the Line of Fire. Good night.